This will be brief. We did write a joint fist and IAC statement regarding the murder of Oscar Grant and the rebellion that broke out on Wednesday. But before I even go into that, there was another shooting that occurred a day before, 24 hours before Oscar Grant was murdered, and that was of a young man by the name of Robbie Tolan, who was shot in Bel Air, which is outside of Houston. He's black. His father played for the Cardinals, and he has a collapsed lung and a bullet in his liver. And he was shot basically for DWB, driving while black. The cops said they had suspicion of stolen vehicles in the area, and in an area that is about over 95% white. Of course, they pulled over the two young black males driving in the car. On January 1st, is when Oscar Grant was shot. And I'm sure most people have seen the video, but if you've not yet seen the video, and Oscar Grant was 22 years old and has had a 4-year-old and was a supermarket worker. He was lying face down with his hands behind his back, and there were a number of officers around him. One of them had his knee in his back, stood up, reached for his holster, pulled his weapon from it, and fired into the man's back. And he died instantly as a result of the bullet actually entered into his body twice, going through his body, hitting the concrete, and ricocheting back into his body, and that's what killed him. This pig, Masurley, he resigned, and in the process, in the articles talking about his resignation, they were talking about the supposed interview between him and the police, the pig union. And I mean, the fact that pigs get unions. I mean, they're not workers. They are opposition to workers. They are pigs. They're extension of the state. They're the armed wing of the ruling class. They're not workers. So the fact that there's all this talk about the policeman's union and he has certain rights, you just imagine if somebody in this room shot somebody and it was on videotape and there's all these people witnessing it, you're not going to be walking around deciding when or when not you're going to actually submit and sit down to a damn interview. You're going to be in a goddamn jail cell, and you're going to be interrogated by the pigs. And this is not what has been extended to Masurley. There is no question what he did. It is there for the entire world to see. He murdered this man in cold blood. There's no question. What could he possibly say in an interview? Oops, I meant to go for my taser? Bullshit. That man was obviously compliant and was laying face down on the ground, so what use would he have of any weapon to subdue him when there was all those officers standing around, all those pigs standing around, and the man was lying face down on his back? Any weapon was as an act of brutality, and we know tasers have been responsible for many deaths anyway. But he knew exactly what he was doing. He was intending to inflict harm on Oscar Grant, and it led to the murder of this man. So there's no question about what should be done to him. He should be locked under the goddamn jail. But he has since resigned from his position. Therefore, he's not subject to be to have to answer questions to the Internal Affairs Division. And that, pigs don't go after pigs anyway. There's a code of blue. They protect one another. Internal Affairs ain't going to go after no damn pig. It's the actual movement itself. And Wednesday morning, and it just goes to show that when conditions, crises deepen, and when you have all these things in the atmosphere, even if it wasn't happening to the particular people involved, and in Oakland is one of the poorest cities in California, so a lot of people have been hit by the economic crisis. There's nowhere in the country where people haven't been hit by the economic crisis. But when you have all these things in the atmosphere that are happening all at the same time, people get into a fighting mood. And that is what happened on Wednesday when the people of Oakland decided to rise up and rebel. And if you look at the videotape, this was after his funeral. His funeral occurred earlier that day on Wednesday, and the people took to the streets immediately. Even the mayor, Ron Dellums, took to the street. Of course, as the mayor, if he could force that person to be arrested and have him brought in, but he made a lot of progressive statements regarding wanting to see justice in this particular instance. But if you look at the videotape, there's one image of a young brother who has dreadlocks, and he's standing in front. You see a line of pigs in their full riot gear with their helmets, holding their batons, and he begins asking one, "Do you have any children? Excuse me, officer, do you have any children?" He asks them over and over and over, and he says, "Why can't you look me in my eye?" And you hear in the background young people of color saying, "We are the children of the Black Panther Party." And and this young man continues for a full 10 minutes. And then he says, "Oh, I understand. You can't talk to me unless I'm compliant, unless I'm face down on the ground." And he lays face on the ground and says, "Can you talk to me now? Is that easier for you to address me like a human being?" And you see as this young man is talking to him, you see other people, mostly people of color, coming up into the police line, and you hear the cops saying, "Move back, please." But these young men ain't in the mood to move back, to step back from no pigs. And so they're stepping up to the line and getting in the face of these cops, and they're showing that they're not afraid. And it was that spirit that rebellion broke out. This was a multinational rebellion, and it was led by black youth that are sick and tired. And if you see some of the interviews, there was one young woman who said, and I'm going to use her a quote that is actually in the statement that we wrote. She said, we live a life of fear, and we want them to be afraid tonight." It was the fact that people were fed up, and it was the aggressiveness of the pigs in full riot gear to approach them and begin charging them that created the atmosphere. But they shouldn't just have been afraid Wednesday night. They should be afraid from now on, because people are in a fighting mood, and the ruling class understands that. That's why you see a lot of different things. They have reports saying that they're expecting more riots in the cities, more civil unrest in the cities, and they've taken 2 brigades that have been over in Iraq, and they've assigned them to Homeland Security. You see all these things happening because they know that there's no answer to this economic crisis. It's going to get worse and worse, and the state is going to get more and more repressive, and it's going to create the conditions where you're going to see not just Oakland, but other large cities in Detroit and Baltimore, people all over this country rising up and rebelling and saying, "We've had enough," drawing a line in the sand and saying, we're not going to take it anymore. And the people, one of the things that we made clear in the statement is that the people have a right to their indignation. They have a right to rebel. It is a right of being oppressed and exploited people to fight back against a system that rebels you, and that there is no crime in doing that. The crime is the actions of the state and their repressive police forces.